Welcome back to episode 3 of Runeterrors. It's been a while since the last episode, so let's talk about what this video series is all about first. This is a series where we analyze misplays made during Legends of Runeterra games, and we talk about what could have been done differently in those situations. Since I recently did a deck guide on the Lux Heimerdinger Control deck a few days ago, I figured why not do this episode on the same deck? There will be a link in the top right corner of the video if you want to check out that deck guide, by the way. Anyway, this episode is filled with good examples of how even small mistakes can cost you games when playing control decks. But the biggest reason I'm focusing on Lux Heimerdinger today is so you can avoid the mistakes I make here if you decide to take this deck to the rank ladder. Let's jump into it. The first situation we'll be looking at is during a game against the infamous Zero Champion Burn aggro deck that used to dominate the meta until it was nerfed in the last balance patch. My opponent hasn't played a lot of units in the first 4 rounds of the game. So let's listen in and see what happens when round 5 starts and it's their attack turn. Okay, thermal beam here. I'll pass. Not sure what they're thinking of here. So they end up just passing without playing anything, and then I pass as well because I wanted to make sure my Radiant Guardian would have lifesteal when I played her. This looks like an innocent turn, and it doesn't seem like I make any misplays, but there are 2 things going on here. One was that since they didn't play anything, that means that their hand was almost all burn spells. The other crucial thing I needed to do was to go ahead and play Radiant Guardian to pressure them. My opponent never ended up killing any of my units, so I could get lifesteal on Radiant Guardian. Now, this could have been intentional. Good aggro players will try to play around giving Radiant Guardian lifesteal if it doesn't cost too much for them to do. But I think it's just as likely that they just had a bad hand of all spells and had nothing to play. While I did realize a turn later that I needed to pressure them, which is why I played the unlicensed innovation that I got off of Flash of Brilliance, it was a little too late. That Radiant Guardian sat in my hand for the rest of the game, and despite me drawing into another one and actually playing it, my opponent still ended up winning the damage race. There are several takeaways from this example. You have to recognize that you need to kill your aggro opponent before they kill you. You need to think about whether or not you need to play a certain card this turn, and that's based on whether or not you'll have another chance to play it later on. And most importantly, you have to think about what cards are in your opponent's hand whenever they make a play that's unexpected. This next situation is against the Scout deck that's been doing a decent job applying pressure against me. Something that comes with the territory though when playing any Heimerdinger deck. They have Quinn and a Grizzled Ranger in play, and on their attack turn, they open with Cythria. Let's listen in and see how I react. Alright, I can Thermo Beam. Single combat kind of messes us up here, but at least they have to choose between Lux and Heimer. So this is a pretty simple one. I made the one mistake you should never ever do when playing any Heimerdinger deck, and that was spending all of my mana immediately on Thermogenic Beam to remove something. In general, you never do this when your opponent still has mana left over to make plays. In this case, they had 5 mana, which was enough to play nearly any spell that Demacia midrange decks commonly run, all the way up to Concerted Strike. In this case, I get punished hard by my opponent, and they play not 1, but 2 single combats to remove my Lux and Heimerdinger before the Thermogenic Beam goes off. Needless to say, the game quickly ended after that. You always need to consider your opponent's available mana and what cards they could play to respond to the card you're thinking about playing. Not just when playing this deck, but any deck in the game. This final example is against a barrier midrange deck. Neither of us have done a lot in the early game, and I've even managed to deal with their first Shen. So I'm not in danger of dying anytime soon. On my attack turn, I decide to actually open with playing Lux. Let's listen in and see what I do next.
If only Fiora could see me now.
She can. She's not impressed.
They don't have anything to pop the barrier, so we can kind of just go. Alright. They got a pretty bad one. That's good.
I never hold back.
Okay.
Counter and strike.
What could I have done there? If I didn't spend Mystic Shot, I could have went Unyielding Spirit, but I didn't think about that. I would have had 9 mana here. Yeah, I should have done that. So I'll just lose the Lux and play a Radiant Guardian. So what seemed like another innocent play turned out to not be one. I went for Mystic Shot to take out the 5/1 Swiftwing Lancer because I wanted to make blocking Lux as uncomfortable for my opponent as possible. However, I didn't realize that I could have saved the spell mana to play Unyielding Spirit on Lux next turn. Despite being slightly ahead for a bit, it turns out I needed Lux to generate Final Sparks to keep the board under control, and that she was likely my win condition this game. They could have countered that play with Will of Ionia, but it's also possible they didn't have it in hand, especially given they used Purify to deal with my Vanguard Redeemer that I ended up using Unyielding Spirit on. Regardless, my opponent ended up sticking around, and there was a lot of back and forth between us fighting for board, but I ended up on the losing end. This is another example of how one small mistake can end up costing you the game much later on. And that's it for this episode of Runeterrors. If you liked the video and want to see more videos like this, feel free to give it a like below. If you want to guarantee that you don't miss out on future episodes as well as any other Legends of Runeterra content, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell below to stay informed. If you're into watching Legends of Runeterra live, feel free to check out my Twitch stream as well. Link is in the video description below, along with other links for anyone that's looking to join the community or support the channel further. Thanks for taking time out of your day to watch this, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.